Hi everyone, welcome to lessons 18 into 19. The reason that this is 18 sort of and 19 is because in this first part of the lesson for lesson 18, I'm going to talk you through again how you can write up your final letter to your MP on the topic of climate change. Lesson 19 is effectively a no video lesson because you will just be writing to a 45-minute deadline for your assessment. Now, we know you don't have access to all of your books, and that's absolutely fine, okay? So when you come to write this piece up, you are going to be writing it either by typing or by handwriting, as you normally would in class. So if you'd normally have laptop access, and you're going to be using that again for today's work. If you would normally be handwriting it in class, I'm going to ask you to do as you normally would and to handwrite it. So the first lesson that we're going to do now is going to be about how to ensure you get high marks on it, and we're going to be looking at the plan that you've already constructed and thinking through some of the methods that you might want to use to enhance what you've written. And then for the last part of the lesson, I will notify you that this is effectively now moving into lesson 19, and at that point you will need to be spending a good 45 to 50 minutes on your own, just writing up as if you were in class sitting an assessment, okay? And you'll need to then take pictures of your work or scan it in and send that to your normal class teacher for marking, all right? You are more than welcome to share with me as well. I'll prioritise marking my class, but I would love to read some examples of your work from other classes as well. Some of you, I teach for other subjects as well, so I do know you, and if you want some feedback, I'd very happily give that to you. Okay, so our objective then for the first part of the lesson, lesson 18, is to basically complete your letter and be ready to write it up into your assessment book or into your version of what that'll be under lockdown. For the second part of the lesson, it is just over to you and writing. So let's get going. So last lesson we talked through how important it was that you used this slide to help guide your writing. I think it's a really, really good idea to tick off in your book once you think you have completed your letter, and tick off the criteria here that you think you have included, particularly your list of key ingredients in the middle there. So you want to make sure that you have used a good range of fire actions. You don't necessarily have to have used all of them, but you want to have used, I'd say, at least 5 or 6 of them across your letter. And it is absolutely fine if you use more of some than of others, and if you repeat your use of some of them. It doesn't matter if you haven't included all of them, but you want to have used a real variety of them. You want to also tick off that you've addressed the MP directly and with the appropriate level of formality and respect, that you have tried to use syllogism, so premise plus equals conclusion, and that you have tried to embed ethos, logos and pathos. So remember that ethos was your use of references to other people who've got high status, like to Greta Thunberg or David Attenborough, or even Tony Abbott. Your logos is your use of logical, rational arguments and your use of facts and statistics to back up and support what you're saying. And pathos was your appeal to emotion. Again, I recommend that pathos is really hammered home in your concluding part of your letter. You really want to sort of stress the emotional impact towards the end. You want to also use your forms of address, so your use of personal pronoun I or my to show how much you care, but then to address your reader, Maria Miller at MP, with you. You might also be using that you as a plural for those members of Parliament that meet in the House of Commons. You might be wanting to address the whole government, so you can use you either individually or as a plural, and we to show that we share the concern with this topic, okay, of climate change, that it impacts all of us and it's our future. So any of those inclusive words, you want to make sure you're using those. We're going to talk today a bit about how you can develop your range of punctuation, including the examples that are there on the screen, and how you can vary your sentence structures for impact. So that's the work we're going to now concentrate on. You will need to refer back to this slide. So what I'd suggest you do is you watch the rest of this video. When it moves over to what would have been lesson 19, your writing time, I suggest you rewind the video and pause it on this screen so that you can make sure you are including these as you write. You are welcome when you write up your final assessment to have all of your notes in front of you. You can use your draft copy. You can use any of the work that we've produced so far. So this isn't like you're writing blind. You've got all of your resources there to draw on, okay? Okay, so as a bit of a warm-up to looking at your sentence forms, punctuation and grammar, you're going to have a go at this starter. So now the objective is going to be not just to be completing your final piece of your letter writing, but also to be able to embed and write with technical accuracy using a wide range of punctuation for persuasive effect. So for your starter here, can you correct these grammatical obscenities? So there are some problems or flaws with the three statements below. Can you write them out to correct the problems? Have a go at doing that now. Pause the video. Okay, so what I wanted you to do is to try and rewrite the three examples below here from hunters please use caution when hunting pedestrians using walk trails, let's eat grandma, and panda eats sheets and leaves. I hope you were able to see these kind of obvious grammar problems. So there is something fundamentally wrong with the way that these have been punctuated, and it affects the logic or understanding of the meaning of each of those sentences, and it can really throw us off if we are not using punctuation accurately. So that was the whole point of this starter, to teach you that. Hopefully you found some of these kind of amusing. My favourite one, let's eat grandma. One straight out of like Red Riding Hood, I feel. So hopefully you've had a bit of fun having a look at that. We're now going to talk through how you can use a variety of punctuation. Okay, so what I'm going to do for each of the following slides is talk you through some of the varied forms of punctuation that I'd like you to try to develop in your letter writing. So for each of those, I'm going to talk you through what it is, how you can use it, and then give you a task involving that form of punctuation. So the first one that we're going to have a look at is the dash. So a dash is not the same as a hyphen, though they are the same key on a computer keyboard. A hyphen goes inside compound words like warm up or mother-in-law, and notice there is no space between the letters and the hyphen, whereas a dash goes between words. It is actually a longer line than a hyphen and should have a space before and after the line, like this. So if you look at the bottom there, you can see an example. Okay, so it forms a kind of longer pause. It detaches one part of a sentence from another. I'm now going to ask you to try and add a sentence to your letter that uses this technique. So if I were you, I would plan this out separately, and then you can work out where you want to embed that in your letter afterwards. But you want to try and plan some sentences using each of the punctuation forms we look at, and then you can decide where you work them into your answer afterwards. So pause the video and have a go at completing the sentence using a dash now. Right, the next form we're going to look at is using brackets. So brackets are used when you want to add information to a sentence which will give greater detail. So unlike a dash, the information is extra and not really necessary, which means that it can be removed without damaging the original information. So can you work out, looking at the writing here, where the brackets should go? Donald Trump, the President of the United States, gave a speech on Monday. Try and copy that sentence out now and use brackets for the additional information which we could take out of that sentence and it would still make sense. That's going to be the information that would be included in your brackets. Posh word for brackets is parenthesis, that's the technical name for it. So if I refer to parenthesis, I'm also meaning brackets, they're the same thing. Okay, so copy the sentence out, put the brackets in the correct place. Once you have done that, you're going to do the same thing for the sentence below it. So Connor, Amy's boyfriend, bought the tickets. Where would the brackets go? Okay, so some feedback then. So Donald Trump, the President of the United States, gave a speech on Monday. If we cut out the information, the President of the United States, and put that in brackets, that would still make sense as a sentence. Donald Trump gave a speech on Monday. Okay, so the President of the United States should have gone into brackets to show that it's additional information. Okay, using parentheses to mark that out. And again, with Connor, Amy's boyfriend bought the tickets. Amy's boyfriend should or could have gone into brackets there. Okay, so it's for any additional information that you could cut out and the sentence would still make sense. So let's have a look at the next slide with a bit more information. So one thing to remember here, any full stop at the end goes with the sentence it closes. If the sentence is wholly inside the brackets, then the full stop should come before the closing bracket. This rule looks like this. If the bracket is within a sentence, then the full stop comes after the closing bracket like this. Okay, now you know what I'm going to ask you to do. Can you add a sentence that you could use within your letter that uses this technique? So you want to write a sentence that would include some additional information that you would include in brackets. And that if you took that information out, your sentence would still make sense. For more of a challenge, try to make a slightly sarcastic point and include that in brackets. That's for those who need extra challenge. Otherwise, you're just writing a sentence that uses the brackets. Pause the video there. Right, our next technique that we're going to look at is colons. And a colon can be used in a couple of ways. So it can be used to introduce a list, as I did above, but you can also use it to join two complete sentences where the second explains or follows the first. So your task now is going to be to add a colon to this sentence here. This is the secret to my extraordinary life, always do the unexpected. Where could I have used a colon? Think about where you could add it in, copy the sentence out, put a colon in where you think it belongs, and pause the video. And as it reminds you here, the colon introduces statements or emphasises a connection between two parts of a sentence. So for your task, you're now going to be adding a sentence to your letter that uses the same technique. Model it on the piece here. So your answer here was, that is the secret to my extraordinary life. That is where you would use your colon at the end of that first bit. Always do the unexpected, because the always do the unexpected connects to the first part. That is the secret of my extraordinary life. Okay, so I want you to make a similar sentence about climate change now that uses a colon to connect two parts of the sentence together to show a connection. Okay, have a go at planning that now, or you can write a sentence that uses a colon to introduce a list if you wish. You may wish to list some of the harm that will be done to the planet if we fail to act on climate change. So plan your answer out now using the colon and pause the video. Right, so the next technique we're going to look at is semicolons. You can use the semicolon when you write two separate sentences which should have a full stop or connective between them, but you'd like to keep them closely linked. So for your task, add a semicolon to the sentence here. David is doing poorly in school. His parents have grounded him. So this is where the two parts that you're showing a connection between are reliant on each other. So the second part only really makes sense if you've read the first part. So where would we put in a semicolon to show that what follows it is dependent on the first part? David is doing poorly in school. His parents have grounded him. Where would you put in the semicolon? Copy the sentence down now and put in the semicolon where it belongs. And then you're going to repeat that for the second one. I went to the supermarket today. I bought a lot of fruit. Okay, so put in the semicolons where you think they belong. And we're going to talk answers. So David is doing poorly in school. That is where your semicolon should come. His parents have grounded him. And for your second example, I went to the supermarket today, semicolon, I bought a lot of fruit. And same for the last ones. You're going to be now writing your own sentence using a semicolon on the topic of climate change. And you're going to use this as a way to make sure that you are demonstrating that you can use a variety of punctuation in your assessment. So plan out a sentence now where the second part is dependent upon us understanding the first part of the sentence on the topic of climate change. Don't worry if these are hard, guys. This is all, giving you as much information as I can to try and help you to achieve your best remotely. If you can't do any of this or it feels too tough, rewind the video, go back, check the information, use your independence to research the punctuation separately and look at other examples of how you could use it in your work. Ask for help and support from people around you. And if it's still too tough, you can get in contact with your teachers and we will help you. And if you still don't get it, you've tried and you've given it your best shot, and that's all we're asking. Okay, so don't be too hard on yourselves if this is a lot of information for you. Okay, but do your best to try and write some examples that you think might work. Right, so we have now talked through some of the varied punctuation that wouldn't necessarily be punctuation that you're used to using, and the whole point of this is to try and teach you the range of punctuation that you can use to create really persuasive effects. And that's the whole point and objective of what we're doing with our letter, is learning how to write to persuade others. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of help and support with how you can use that punctuation. And it's really important that when you think you're done with your writing, that you don't just put it aside at the end of your 45 minutes and feel like you've achieved your aim. The work is never just done the instant the pen lifts from the last sentence of your piece. You're done once you've read it back over and thought about how you can improve it, and you've checked for your mistakes. And this is such an important step that so many students and writers forget to do. It's really important that you are reading back over your work. Can you find a way to effectively incorporate some of these sophisticated punctuation devices into your writing? Could you add them in? Could you add in a dash? Could you swap out some of your full stops for dashes, for example? Or could you add in an ellipsis, a ... in place of a full stop, to indicate the length of pause you wish to create, to force your audience to think? So I want you to really go over your work and think about how you can improve it. As in life, we only get better or become, better people or our better selves if we reflect, if we stop and think about what we've done and think about how we could do it better. And it's so important in your writing that you're giving yourself time to do that, okay? And it is a skill, and it doesn't always come naturally, and we have to kind of discipline ourselves to make ourselves do it, but it really pays off. Please give it a go, guys. Really try and look at improving your writing. Remember, these devices should have an effect. You're not just throwing any old punctuation in, possibly in the wrong place. Every time you use it, you want to use it really deliberately because you know what effect you want to create. Pauses are incredibly important in persuasive writing because you want to build that pause time to force your audience or reader to really think about the point that you've just made. Look back at your work and look at a point where you make a really serious argument, and you want your audience at that point, your reader, Maria Miller, to stop in her tracks and really think about what you've said. At that point, that's where you want to add in something like an ellipsis, your ... or a dash, okay? Be sure to try to use your devices that you think that you have not necessarily previously felt confident with. There's always a point in trying to use new methods. Even if you're not sure you're getting it right, give it a go. See if you can learn how to do it right, okay? And so this is always like the really painful bit in English. It's like looking at your technical accuracy and reading back over your work. And I get that. I always feel really self-conscious when I'm doing it, and I completely relate to that. But it is vital for your improvement. Give it a go. Before you submit any of your work, I want to see that you've actually had a go with your green pen at improving it and adding in variety for your punctuation. Right, we're on to final tips before you will start writing. Okay, so your persuasive sentence starters and upgrading your sentences. And the information on the slide that I'm showing you here are some tips if you feel like you're getting stuck with your sentence structures. So if you're like, I kind of know what I want to say about climate change, I'm not really sure how to say it really persuasively. Well, don't forget that you can take any of these sentence starters here to help you to make your writing flow and to make sure that you know how to start your point off. So this slide should be something you refer back to, particularly the bit on the left here with your sentence starters. If you think you're getting stuck, use some of these to help you, okay? And if you're looking back at your work and you're thinking, I'm a bit repetitive, I'm not like using very sophisticated sounding sentences, then try to build in some of these. So the strategies on the right here talk you through some alternative ways of opening a sentence or of developing a sentence in order to make you sound more formal and sophisticated. So, for example, your sophisticated starters, we've got like a triple or noun colon, like stress, anxiety, frustration. At the end of term, students' emotions are out of control. That's an example of using that triple of stress, anxiety, frustration. You might be able to come up with your own example like that for climate change. So think about how you can use that method to help advance what you've written. You could also use an adverb to open a sentence. Typically, no one consults children on how they feel. You know, instead of about school holidays, you might be adding about climate change. Verb beginnings as well and double adjective starts are very clever and interesting ways to vary your kind of style of punctuation and sentence structures. Okay, you can join the two together. So you might want to be developing a double adjective start and you might decide that you're going to build into that use of brackets. Now, if you're doubling up on your methods like that, then you're going to be writing with real interesting style and variation, which is what any reader wants when they're reading something. They don't want it to sound overly formulaic. They want it to sound like it's got a bit of life and passion to it. And that's what these sentence starters will give you. We've also got perfect pairs that you can use. And these are phrases that you can build into your writing, like not only but also, fortunately, unfortunately. So in that context it would go something like this, only on the topic of climate change. Fortunately, the holiday companies are aware of holiday dates and can adjust the capacity for those periods. Unfortunately, this comes at a significant financial premium. So you might say something like, fortunately, as society is becoming more and more developed as a result of our reliance on oil and gas, however, or unfortunately, this comes at a significant premium for the planet. You can also use pairs like whoever, whenever, like the example here, and some, then other. So some people thrive on hard work, others need regular breaks to remain productive. So some people develop very convincing arguments against climate change, citing scientific evidence to back up their points. Others would debate the reliability of the scientific information they provide for us. So these are methods that you can also use if you're getting stuck. Okay, please come back to this slide as you're writing to help you to pick up ideas if you feel that you get stuck at any points. Right, so at this point I am going to return you to this slide where we run through the kind of key vocab and the key methods and techniques that I'm looking for you to include in your letter writing. Again, use all of the notes in your books, use all of the resources you've been given, look at examples of phrases from Greta Thunberg's speech, look at examples from David Attenborough, Tony Abbott, any of the examples we've been through to collect evidence or mimic their style or vocabulary in your letter writing. Okay, now very shortly you need to get yourself ready to actually start writing your assessment. Feel free to end the lesson at this point and pick up with the writing next lesson if you need a break, okay? But you will need to spend a solid 45 minutes of undivided attention time to actually write up your assessment in neat. Use all of your notes. You are not limited. You're not doing this without any resources. You can use anything and everything you like to help you, but do not plagiarize. Do not just steal words and phrases and sentences from other writers. Borrow facts, borrow statistics, but do not steal the phrasing that the writer has used. You can do it better. You're going to use your knowledge. Now you're pretty expert at using fire actions and the methods here. Do it yourself. You'll write beautifully. Give it your best shot, 45 minutes of time. At the end of that time, you will need a green pen and you will need to go back over your work to make corrections, add in a better range of punctuation or vocabulary and tweak it to make it flow more effectively. Okay, I would suggest you pause the video at this point, and I'm now going to go on to talk about the feedback when you think you're done. So once you've written it, you will need to have a look at the end of this video now to learn how you can self-assess your work once you think you're complete. Okay, so welcome to the final stages. Hopefully at this point you have spent 45 minutes writing. If not, pause the video. You need to now write up the full version of your letter in which you are going to write to your MP requesting that more action is taken on climate change. This is not a real letter that's going to your MP. It's a fictional version of a letter. You do not have to send this to anybody. It's not political. It's about learning how to write for a target audience and using persuasive language. If you think your letter is really good and you want to send it off, then you are welcome to do that. Maybe you can let me know what happens. I would really feel very privileged if you'd let me read your work and if you told me what you were planning to do with it. So that would mean a lot to me, and I hope some of you will. So final steps now, having written your letter using all of the advice in the previous lessons, you're going to grab your green pen and you're going to work through steps 1, 2 and 3 here. Obviously we're not going to be swapping with a partner because we can't do that currently. If you can get some feedback from somebody at home or phone a friend and talk it through with them and get them to give you some feedback, that would be absolutely amazing. So give that a go if you have the ability to. If not, do as much of this as you can for yourself in your green pen. So we're going to start with stage 1. You're going to highlight the techniques you have used and label them. So I want you in your green pen to identify down your margin of your page some of your fire action methods that you've used. And you might either do an arrow to where you've used them, or you might be highlighting examples from your written letter and you're labeling it up to show where you've used specific techniques. Obviously, if you do want to send this off to your MP, then you will need to have either photocopied or got another version of your letter written out that doesn't have all your highlighting and your self-reflection work on it. Okay, so bear that in mind. You may need to get someone to take a copy of it or take a photo of it before, and you'll need to then either attach that to an email and send it out to your MP, or you will need to print it, hopefully when we get facilities back at school, hopefully. So you are highlighting the techniques that you think you've used. You can also include not just fire actions, but ethos, logos and pathos as well. And then you're going to give yourself, for stage 2, your what went well and your EBI, and they are down here. So your what went well on the left and your EBI on the right. And you've got a list to choose from. I want you to write out the statements that you think best apply to your particular work. Okay, so work your way down each list. Which of those do you think you've done really well? It might be that you think that you've matched the gap, as in genre, audience and purpose, really effectively. You wrote it as a letter, you targeted it to your MP, and the purpose of trying to get them to do more on climate change was really clear. If you did all of that, fantastic, well done. So your what went well would be match the gap. You might say that you've used a good use of first person, so you said I and my, to show that you personally were invested in the issue. And similarly for the even better ifs, you might find that there are some of those that you know that you could have done more of or could have developed. Perhaps you needed to use number 7, more ambitious or sophisticated vocabulary, or maybe number 8, that you need to try and write a little bit more in the time next time round. So I'm looking for at least 2 from each list, 3 if you can, from the what went well and the even better ifs. Okay, at this point, Once you've completed all of that, you should now have your final assessment letter ready to go. And once you have got it, you'll either, if you've annotated it, need to take a picture of that and upload it on Show My Homework, or email your teacher with it. I'd love to have a copy as well. If you do send it to your teacher, then you can always say, please forward on to Miss Riley to have a look at as well. Okay, and I'd be honoured to read your work. I hope you've had some fun with some of this work as well. The lessons will continue on the theme of climate change, but they're going to be taking a slightly different direction, focusing at some of the other ethical issues like fast fashion, and we're going to do some creative writing as well, and that will be the end of the unit. Thank you for all of your hard work. Can't wait to read what you have produced. Well done, everyone.